welcome back to another episode of the Offsides Podcast, the unofficial official podcast of Charlotte Football Club. As always, I'm your host, Andres Robledo, and I'm joined by my co-host, Pablo Robledo. Pablo, how's it going?
Not too bad. Good busy week. MLS playoffs started, so pretty good. How
Nice,
about you?
nice. Not too bad as well. Nice, easy weekend. Watched a couple of Premier League games and played a lot of FIFA 23, trying to grind and get some packs open. So that's been fun. So, one other thing we want to get right to the top of is to introduce our special secret guest. We have none other than Mr. Jorge Gonzalez himself, Mr. TopBin90. Jorge, how's it going, buddy?
It's great, great. Excited to be here. Thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, man, thanks for coming on. We're super excited to have you. Obviously, you are a big content creator in the Charlotte FC space and pretty much a journalist as well with the writing staff you have, putting out some great articles on the team. Um, so, we're excited to have someone with a Charlotte FC expert as yourself on.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. I don't know if I would consider myself an expert, but definitely do a lot. And so Top Bin 90 is turning into exactly what I wanted in terms of how my personality is. I like seriousness, and that comes with the articles and, putting out good content and news. But I also like to have fun. And so we kind of steer towards that as well with vlogs and, and fun stuff with the players as well. So it's fun and exciting. It's informative and entertaining as well, I'd like to say.
Yeah, the show you guys do on YouTube, where you guys live, that's always fun as well to watch, and you guys are definitely very entertaining on there. The rapport you and Lee have is always good to catch.
For sure, it is.
So even though the season's over, Charlotte FC did have a little bit of news come out. We've exercised a couple of contract options. Jorge, for new fans like myself and Pablo to the MLS, do you kind of want to, in a high level view, explain what that is and who we did it for?
Yeah, so some of these players were coming up to the end of their contracts. So a couple of these players had a year and what's called an option. And some players were coming to the end of their contracts and they start renegotiating with either Charlotte FC or another MLS team. What Charlotte did today was they picked up the options of four different players. The forwards Mackenzie Gaines and Daniel Rios, goalkeeper George Marks, and midfielder Derek Jones. So two of these, in my opinion, were expected. I expected them to exercise that option on Mackenzie Gaines and definitely George Marks. I was a little bit surprised, if I'm being honest with you, with them seeing them pick up the options for Daniel Rios and Derek Jones. And so it was some very interesting news. It looks like a Fool and Fuchs, which were the other players that they had options for they declined those options, but there are still negotiations. So you could potentially see them. In my opinion, I think Fuchs. I think a Fool is gone. Fuchs, there's still a slight possibility.
Yeah, I'm in a similar train of thought as yourself with that. Um, the Daniel Rios one, I have to agree, was like kind of the most surprising one in my eyes. I still think he could possibly leave in the offseason if the right transfer fee is presented to Charlotte, just with his recent form. But the one I was most happy with was definitely Derek Jones. I think, you guys put out a really great article on his impact the last, 10 games or so. And I definitely think he transformed that midfield with his presence there in front of the back center backs. So glad to see that hopefully he will be staying with the team.
Yeah, and so you also have to think as well. The expansion draft is coming in, and for people that don't know that, there's a new team coming in, St. Louis, and kind of like us last year, they'll have the opportunity to pick five players from any MLS team that didn't have players picked last year. So, for example, we picked up Mackenzie Gaines from Austin. So Austin will not be in this expansion draft since they had a player taken from them last year. we will definitely be in there. So there's a possibility that Rios gets left unprotected. So during these expansion drafts, uh, every MLS team is allowed to protect 12 players. And if there's and homegrown players aren't considered in this draft, and also Ben Bender, who was a Generation Adidas player, will also not be participating in this draft. So guys like Rios be picked up by a team like St. Louis.
Gotcha. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how we acquired Rios from Nashville, right?
So we paid a transfer fee for him.
Oh, okay. All right. See, this is why you're here, to put us in our place. Awesome. Pablo, anything else to add there? Were you surprised by any of these options being exercised?
Yeah, I was definitely surprised by a couple of these. The ones that like the ones I'm really happy about were definitely Jones and Gaines. The one I'm kind of 50-50 on is definitely Rios, just because, like I think we didn't really see the Rios we wanted until the last few matches, and by then it was like, we were just hanging on by a thread. And he kept, he kept our dreams alive for a while, but it was just, if he would have done that earlier in the season, I think it would have been better for us. And the one that I don't 100% agree on was the goalkeeper Marks. I just haven't seen enough of him, and the short bit I've seen from him, um, I just haven't been too impressed. And I'm not typically a fan of like shorter goalkeepers. I think they're at a real disadvantage when it comes to like, long shots or those, top right, golazos that like Reina likes to put in. Um, I don't know. I haven't been a big fan of him, but this whole transfer and how MLS does it is just, it's my first year, so it's a bit odd, but it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad we had
Yep.
someone to come explain the expansion draft, because honestly, I didn't know how it worked.
No problem. Yeah. I mean, you also got to take into account, too, though, when it comes to the makeup of a roster for MLS, I mean, this is one of the most complicated leagues to understand. So even me, like, I haven't been following it that long, but even still, I still have certain questions of things that even people within the club, I don't think can properly answer. I think you exercise options like George Marks because you have to take into account there's also a salary cap, I don't know what it'll be next year, but I think it'll be roughly around 5.2, 5.3 million. So if you're able to pick up a goalkeeper that's looking like it's going to be a third option and pay him a minimum contract of 60,000, it's not a bad guy to have in a supplemental roster. So I can see why they would pick a guy up like him
That
to
makes
continue.
sense, yeah.
Especially,
Go ahead, sorry.
say near the end here, Cisniega kind of beat him to that second goalkeeper spot, and you saw Cisniega played well for the couple games that he played. But I think George Marks is a good goalkeeper. I mean, he virtually went from he was the third in the super draft for Charlotte FC, and he impressed enough to kind of go to second and beat out guys like Adrian Zendejas and beat out guys like Cisniega for a while. And it just goes to show you that there's something there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think we, the salary thing makes a lot of sense. Like with the salary cap's another kind of weird wrinkle in the league that I think we're still trying to learn as well. But no, it's a good breakdown on Marks, and it does make sense when you put it that way.
For sure.
Yeah, especially if you like, you don't if you leave him out and then you do got to pick up that third goalkeeper, then you got to, figure into getting him from another league. Then there's transfer fees and all that stuff. So I mean, like you guys said, it just makes sense to hang on to him while you got him.
Yeah. So moving from the news, Jorge, myself, I don't fully know how you got TopBin90 started or your whole entrance into the scene, but I think if people don't know that story, I think that's something we would love to hear. So, could you kind of give us that your origin story into the scene?
Yeah, man. I've always loved watching soccer, man. I mean, growing up, I'm from Honduras, and so I would watch my national team as gives me so many heartaches. But like watch what you support, you watch what you love, right? And so I love my national team. I always support them, even if they're crap. We're still gonna watch. That was probably the first time I started watching soccer. Was like I was really young, and it was like the 2001 Copa America. I think that Colombia won. There's made they lost to Colombia, but they beat Brazil, and I could just remember my family really, really enjoying that run, and I felt like I was a part of it. That kind of birthed my love for the sport. I started following it more. I fell in love with Barcelona, with the Ronaldinho's, Decos. It was of that time, and that was my team. And I also liked watching Premier League, but Barcelona didn't play in the Premier League, and I just didn't understand how everything worked at that time. And remember Real Madrid playing Liverpool in the Champions League, and they called that Liverpool the Spanish Liverpool. I remember Torres scoring a goal, running, and like just like grabbing the back of his shirt, and you could see in slow mo it says Torres, and like that, I fell in love with Liverpool too. I've always been watching these teams since I was young. Always supporting Liverpool, always supporting Barca, and always watching my national team. And I just wanted to talk about soccer. So it pretty much just started as just a YouTube channel to talk about. I wanted to talk maybe Champions League, maybe talk about European leagues, and Charlotte FC was coming. So I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about Charlotte, but kind of like you guys, I didn't understand MLS the way I understand it now. So I started studying it. I started meeting people, and I would go to every Charlotte FC event. And you start networking, you start meeting people, you start understanding the culture. And our team gets pushed back a year, and you go to more events, and you meet more people, and you feel like it's taking forever for the team to come. That's kind of how I got my start, man. I started, finding out information about players that were coming, and I started tweeting about it, and started like kind of getting noticed for some of my early for breaking some transfer rumors. I just realized that I could turn it from just something that I do to kind of something that's more legitimate. And fast forward today, we've got writers, I have an intern, we've got plans to continue to grow what we have. We do lives, we do podcasts with players, we interview different people. I can request. I want pretty much anyone from the club, and 9 times out of 10, they'll be like, "Yeah, we'll let you do the interview." So I'm in a very blessed position, and we've been able to gain a good audience this first inaugural season for Charlotte FC.
Nice. That's awesome. Very cool to hear. Yeah, it seems like we have a lot of the same players and teams that got us into the sport with that, '05 through '08 Barcelona with Ronaldinho in there.
Yeah.
Paul, any questions or anything?
No, I think you definitely hit it on the nail I mean, I can understand like why when you mentioned you got like recognized for that transfer rumor break it that you put. Like I think one of the first posts that I saw from you when we first started doing this podcast was the not Sodersky, uh Yazviak post that you had put out on Instagram, and I kind of put it out there, and then it was like I think a day later that Charlotte put it out, and I was like, oh dang, like okay, we need to follow this guy because like he's definitely putting stuff out there, and like I thought you were somebody like on the inside, but you have a lot of good, I'm assuming, connections, and your articles are very detailed, uh, which I love because like a lot of these other articles in regards to players or squad updates, it's a lot of copy and paste, and they just throw their logo on it, and it's like I'm just reading the same story over and over again. But with yours, it's like you're my first go to pretty much on all this stuff. And then going
Appreciate that,
back to
man.
that, yeah, in that 2001 Copa America, Andres, I don't know if you were there for that. But we were there in Colombia for that. And we went to a couple of those matches, and I used to
awesome.
have the championship poster up in my room from when they won it that year.
Yeah,
I knew
mention
you
that.
boys would appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Absolutely.
you're right. I mean, it's like like you said, you watch what you love, and you support the squad no matter what, the downs and the highs. Like right now in the World Cup, we're out, which we haven't been out of the World Cup in a long time. But now we're just
It
gonna.
doesn't feel the
I'm
same,
gonna keep
right?
an eye on the U.S. No, you're right. It doesn't feel the same, but we'll probably just keep an eye on see how the U.S. does against England, and we'll see what Brazil does too.
Yeah.
And I think that's one important thing too that you notice in terms of like building soccer culture here in Charlotte. See so many young kids now like go to these games and like they experience what soccer is like, and one of the best atmospheres to kind of get introduced to the sport in. Like 10, 15 years from now, we'll hear from kids that say, we were at the inaugural season at Charlotte. I didn't know what was going on. People were dancing pepas, and I was just jumping, and we were scoring. And you know what? I fell in love with the sport. You know, I think it's becoming more accessible for people here in the U.S. Like versus me, like I had to watch it and experience it from my family's perspective, right? Versus now, people are actually going to stadiums and experiencing what I would watch on TV.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And Charlotte bringing a team has definitely changed the culture around here. Like, I mean, when we were growing up, I think only me and one other buddy would watch games. We had some friends that would watch like certain finals and stuff, but like we were the only ones that watching, every Premier League game over the weekend. And, if we're at a park or something, like we're passing a soccer ball around, not a football. And nowadays, like if I go out somewhere, I see kids like at breweries passing a soccer ball around, like 4 or 5 kids playing like pickup games, like on the street or at a brewery or something or in parks. And it's like, this is not around when I was a kid. Like it's crazy how much it's changed here.
100%, man. It's cool, man. It's exciting to see, and I think that's why like people like you and I who create content are in a very good position in terms of MLS in general. I mean, this league is on its path, in my opinion, to outside of the top 5 leagues in Europe. This will be the next league, that people want to watch that generates interest. We're already seeing the level of competition increase year after year. There's certain things that the league definitely needs to improve on, but I think it's heading in the right direction. And if you're creating content in MLS right now, you're in a good position because 5, 10 years from now, when we get there, people are going to be wondering what the heck is a homegrown player, and they're going to be asking you guys to come on and explain these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be pretty awesome. I think another thing too is like you said it, like this league, the MLS league is definitely surpassed other leagues around here. Like compared to Liga MX, I think I saw a post not too long ago where like Liga MX is the Mexican league, and he said in comparison to MLS, like MLS has surpassed the talent that they're acquiring, the amount of viewership the games get is like 3-4 times what Liga MX is. um and you've seen it, like Bale came over. What was the Italian player that came with him as well?
Yeah, Bernardeschi. Oh,
uh
Ini?
I think so.
FC, right?
Started with a G, didn't it?
Yeah, Giorgio Chiellini.
Yeah, there you go. Like those guys could have followed in the footsteps of, other great ones and gone to um like yeah, a French league or Italian league or something like that, but they chose MLS. I'm sure money has a good bit of it to do with it, but you know, um I think coming to MLS, yeah, just kind of extends their soccer lifetime just a little bit longer, and we still get to see those games and appreciate that talent that they bring.
I think also like the level of competitiveness of the league has increased Because I don't think 5 or 6 years ago you would get a guy like Swiderski wanting to come to a team like Charlotte, especially an expansion team, right? But it goes to show you the level that has increased, And I say that because, he could have gone to a okay team in Italy, maybe lower tier, one of the more second, I don't know how to say this, second bottom table of Serie A, but he chose to come here because it's a competitive product that we're offering. And I think too, like less like you go to one of these top European teams or leagues, like the pressure there is sometimes insurmountable. Here, I don't think you get pressure, at least not yet. We lose a couple games, these guys can still go and live their lives. In Europe, in our countries, is totally different. People are on you every day.
Yeah, I totally agree
Yeah.
with that. I mean, I think we talked about it on the podcast, a couple weeks ago. I mean, it was right in the middle where Charlotte were really struggling, and it looked like we might finish last. Fuchs was in the middle of the city, right outside by the building I work in, and having lunch like with his wife and kids, and probably like a nanny, and like no one was bothering him. Like I think I was probably the only person that noticed him, and was just like, "There's no way he could have done this back in England." Like he would have just got surrounded all the
Yeah.
time. So I'm sure that plays a big factor into that. You can, be this top tier athlete and still have a normal life.
Especially when you see like stuff that happened in Liga MX too, with I think it was Atlas and Herétaro, where like people were getting killed and stuff. Like you gotta like as a professional too, you gotta think about stuff like that.
Yeah.
Not to
Yeah,
like go
absolutely.
dark with it, like it's stuff that you have to consider. And this league's becoming more attractive as well. I think also what year one taught, not only but the league is, there's an attractive brand of football that Charlotte wants to play, and there's an attractive atmosphere that you would want to play in. So I think when you look, when players come, like this season, players maybe in Montreal or LA or Toronto, if you go and make an offer, no, man, that was a great atmosphere I played for. This is a great style of football this team's trying to play. So now you have more ammo year two to bring in better targets than you did versus year one.
Yeah. And it seemed
Yeah.
like Latanzio hinted about that, or mentioned that during the last game. He said he was getting a lot of calls from players saying, "Yo, let's I kind of want in on this." So it'll be interesting if that pans out and if he can sign some of those guys.
Yeah, well, from what I heard, they want to be aggressive in adding some key pieces this winter. And it looks like Tepper's going to back the team and back the front office and Latanzio to do that. It's one thing to say it, right? We gotta see if it actually happens, right?
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, this year was respectable. This is exactly what I expected. Prior to Miguel saying we're screwed, my expectations have been this is a team that's going to finish between 7th and 10th. And I was happy with, what being competitive till the end. And we were. We got eliminated second to last game. With everything that Charlotte went through, it wasn't like we were just sitting back and getting attacked every game and trying to pull points. We played an attractive brand of football from time to time. Sure, there was games where we got slapped, like Toronto sticks out that second half at LAFC. But overall, I think the team stayed competitive, right? Now heading into year two, expectations should change, in my opinion. You have a good base of players to work off of. You've got a coach that you believe in and trust in, and some of these players trust in. You have a great atmosphere in at the bank. You have one of the highest prices in MLS as well. Let's not forget that, right? So now the expectations should shift to this has to be a top four team in the East. In my opinion, right? You have to get two or three good pieces to take us from a ninth, eighth, seventh to a 3, 4, 5.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. I think if they have another transfer window like they just recently had with bringing in players like Santos, like Malanda, and
Yeah.
even Brian, I think that getting 6 guys of that caliber into the starting lineup with the you already have Swiderski as well. Mackenzie Gaines is looking really good. Vargas is hopefully going to start turning the corner and improving a bit more. Like, I think, yeah, you bring in 3 or 4 more players, and this could easily be a top 4, top 5 team.
100%. And even guys like Mackenzie Gaines, man, who he's a great player, and I think he was on like 60,000 or 65,000. So depending on how much they increase that, which I don't think is anything spectacular that they're giving him, also goes to show you like you're being smart with the depth that you have in the buildup of a roster, because that's really important.
Yeah.
You know, especially next year where we're going to be playing 3 tournaments. You're going to be in the MLS, you're going to be in the Open Cup, you're going to be in the League Cup as well with Liga MX. So depth becomes important, especially since you have a 20-man roster and a 10-man supplemental roster, which is some really dumb rules that MLS has that hopefully, you know, as things get better and the league gets more attention, they start improving these things.
So, quick
Yeah,
question
to
about.
kinda
Oh, go ahead, Pablo.
Oh, I was just gonna say I see some of these roster restrictions changing in the near future, just in regards to like what you just said, all these competitions that the MLS teams are competing in. And I think once they see the popularity and the success of it, I'm sure more spots on the roster are gonna come. But real quick, Andres, I did want to just ask one question that popped into my head. In regards to what you said about Charlotte being a team that should finish in fourth or fifth or hopefully third in the next coming years. Andres and I have always thought that one thing that might hurt us bringing top tier talent is Charlotte, the city itself. When you compare it to like Miami or New York or LA, all these, you know, kind of tourist attractions. Then you have Charlotte, which is not it's a growing city, yes, but it's not like a big city.
100%.
What
But
are your thoughts on, could that be a factor that kind of hurts us a little bit?
it can be a factor that hurts us depending on the type of player that you're looking for, right? You know, if you're looking to bring in a Bale, a Higuain, a Messi, that's never going to happen in my opinion, right? If you're looking to bring because I think some of these players, when they're looking at MLS, they're looking at, you know, the lifestyle that MLS can provide. In my opinion, that's not the type of players we need to be going for anyways. You know,
Right.
you need to be going to a player that's going to come in here and take the league seriously. All right. We've seen the Zlatans of the world come to places like LA, and he performed well. But what did LA do with him? They didn't win anything. Right? I'm more interested in Charlotte finding quality players that want to come here and want to win things. Right? And I think that, in my opinion, that roster or that deck of cards has increased from inaugural team to year 2 because of the product that Charlotte offers. Charlotte's not going to offer you the lifestyle of LA or New York or Miami. It's going to offer you the ingredients of a team that wants to win, of a team that wants to play a good brand of football, of an atmosphere of a proper soccer team. And these are things that you can sell to players, right? Not every player wants to come here and retire. Players want to come here and make a difference. And as they see the league increasing and getting better, I think that chip becomes more and more valuable than just saying, "Hey, you can come to LA," or "Hey, you can come to New York," or "Hey, you can come to Miami." No, you want to go as a player. In my opinion, if you're a professional, you want to be where you feel like you're in a proper soccer environment, and we're creating that.
Very well said. Yeah, I think another surprising thing that Charlotte had was we seem to have a lot of diamonds in the rough with the roster. Gaines being one of them, and Reina, in my opinion, as well. And then we still have some very good undeveloped talent. I think Bender is still like I think he's going to be one of the Hall of Famers for Charlotte. Just the way his first year went, like very young, very raw talent, and Yes, he still makes those mistakes every now and then, but I think that can be worked on and he can just be molded into like, a number 10.
100%, man. I think people just like, I don't know, like I feel like fan bases are just so like emotional roller coasters. One day they love Ben, the next day they hate Ben. You got to understand this guy just did a leap from college soccer to professional MLS, right? Number
Right,
one
yeah.
draft pick, and he's coming into a more difficult league than players like Andre Shinyashiki and other number one draft picks have come in. This is a way more competitive MLS. So I think from what I've seen, even at the height of his fan, I'm like, relax, give the guy time. He's not a long-term solution just yet. You have to integrate him. You have to play him, right? You have to know when to play him as well. You're gonna see a couple of his deficiencies. For example, in a game against like New York Red Bull, a team that's very physical, is not going to be able to play as well as teams that maybe provide more space because he's better with space. So it's just small nuances that people don't see. And if he has a bad game, they need to send him to independence versus, hey, give the player time, let himself build up, right?
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
totally agree with that. I think he's had, especially in the second half of the season or last third of the season, probably one of the more criticized players unfairly. I mean, to put that much pressure on a rookie to, be your trump card, it doesn't seem right. I mean, they were people compared him to like Swiderski in terms of like the responsibility he had for the team, which I just don't think is quite fair to Bender, unfortunately.
100%.
So moving on real quick to our next topic, you kind of gave us your origin story. We talked a bit about the season, but in your eyes or in your words, kind of summarize this first year for Charlotte. What did it like? How did you see it play out?
Listen, man, I think this year has been a roller coaster. It's been a fun roller coaster. I mean, we started off with, Miguel saying that the team was screwed, right, which opened up a door to, major criticism from MLS in general. It kind of like, I didn't know what to expect, to be honest with you. We're trusting the head coach. He gets to see the day to day of the players, and he's telling us that we're screwed. So, as a fan base, what do we expect? We expect, the front office to back the coach. And it didn't seem like they were doing that, right? And from a fan perspective, you didn't really know, like, we have 20,000 people in there. Will we have 30? Will we have less because of the prices? So it's just like a lot of uncertainties. Looking through the season, man, it's been an amazing inaugural season. We play an attractive brand of football. I think I've mentioned this like 10 times already. We have a great atmosphere, and there's like very memorable games that we have. That inaugural game, breaking the MLS attendance record, that's always going to stick in my mind. That 4-0 annihilation of Philadelphia Union, probably one of our best games ever of the inaugural season.
Mm-hmm.
Our first win against, I think it was New England Revolution.
Yeah.
So it's just been, I'm very satisfied with the first year. I think through all the obstacles, through things that the team faced, like this will go down as a very memorable and good first year, in my opinion.
Perfect. Yeah. And you mentioned the Philly game, the first win, that first home game, which were some huge moments. But from a competitive standpoint, from a fighting for a place in the playoffs, what were some of the key moments in the season that you think kind of determined our end result?
Definitely, it had to be in, let's see, from a negative perspective, I guess. I'll give you two, like from a positive and negative. I think there was that period. Miami away really stands out to me
Mm-hmm.
because we were up 2-0. First of all, we didn't deserve to be up 2-0. The team felt lethargic the whole 90 minutes of that game. I think one of the main reasons was that was in the middle of the Latanzio preseason for these players.
Mm-hmm.
He increased the level of intensity, the level of training, and like these players just weren't up to it just yet. Started losing key matches like that one. lost against Orlando at home. We lost against Toronto, which I mean, Toronto I think had like 3 wins. Like two of them were us in like the last part of the season. Maybe wrong, but it felt like that because it's a team that some of these teams didn't even play well, but they managed to beat us.
Yeah.
I think those are the moments. I think the nuances of this team just not being experienced enough, or not that, and two, not having a player that can put the team on its back, that 10, that difference maker, that can take a 0-0 and win it for us 1-0.
Hmm.
Like like Drusy at Austin FC is a perfect example of that. Down 2-0 in 15 minutes, and he brings his team back. I just don't think we have that player. Swiderski gives you signs of being that player, but I think he's not that player.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the Miami game away. That's the kind of the game that sticks in my head as well, of like where the down spiral started for a bit. And then same with the Toronto game. I think both those games we were kind of circling as like, well, we should beat those teams. Like, especially at the time, like Toronto was dead last. And I think we played them before we played Miami away. I could totally be wrong, but I was kind of thinking like that would be a good place to get the first away win at. And then same with Miami. It was like, well, we just beat them at home. Like, we should be able to travel there. Like, they've been struggling all season. That should be an easy game to win as well. And like you mentioned, that you could really tell the team was tired. I'm sure that weather didn't help, and all that rain and the delay and everything.
Too.
So going from that, though, you kind of mentioned the team doesn't quite have that game changer guy yet. But based out of all the players we do have on the roster, who are your kind of top 3 guys, your key guys that Charlotte really need to hold on to for long-term success?
That's a great question, man. I don't know how long we'll be able to hold them, but projection-wise, I think in our defense, the addition of Adilson Malanda has been incredible. I mean, the guy is just so good.
So good.
Yeah, man. Especially
So
being
good.
he's like 6'3" or 6'4", and he's so mobile. Usually when you're that tall, like you're not as mobile. You're a little bit more wobbly.
Yeah.
So composed, calm
Yeah.
on the ball, can ping you a ball like no other. I think he's going to be very key for this team going into year 2 if they can hold on to him, because if he keeps putting in performances like he is, European teams will come knock for this guy. I think up top, it obviously has to be Karol Swiderski. I think it's very interesting when you look at players in MLS, year 2 is typically better for them than year 1 because they finally find their groove. But I think Swiderski, for a good portion of this season, found his groove. I think he'll be even more important next year, right? With a year under his belt, with understanding the style of what this team wants to play and how important he is. Not only playing a 9 effectively, but playing in that cam role. I think he was thrown at right wing one game as well. So I think he will definitely be a key player for us next year. Again, if we're able to keep him, because if he scores 2 or 3 goals in the World Cup, I think somebody will come and put down 10, 12 million, and I think Charlotte takes it. And then I would really love to see more of Nuno Santos next year.
Yep.
I think the game against Philadelphia, that little flick he had to McKenzie for Rio's 4th goal, that showed a little bit of his class. I think he did a couple of 1-2s with Jordi Alcivar, and against New York Red Bulls as well. You saw the class player he is.
Yeah.
Those are 3 players that you really want to watch for year 2.
Yeah, for Santos, that New York Red Bulls game at the very end, that was like definitely a coming out party for him. Like, would have loved to see him play a couple more games after that, because it really felt like he was, like you said, finding his groove. He was throwing moves, finding great passes. Like, I think with him at Cam and Swiderski up top, like I think that's going to be a dangerous combo in year 2.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think also what you just player you just previously mentioned, Malanda. I think he's definitely going to be one of those starting center backs, and then one Carujo's back 100%. I mean, that's going to be a tough wall to get past. Um, and also, like you just said, like Milanda, for being such a tall guy, his mobility is incredible. I mean, you compare him to like
100.
Jones, which is like, he's another tall guy out there, but you can tell he moves a little slower. His reaction's not as quick, but it's like Milanda, he's on you like, you know, it's incredible.
Sure.
So speaking of the Swiderski, transfer rumors, what do I think he ended the season with what, like 10 goals and a handful of assists. And like you said, if he bags 2 or 3 goals in the World Cup, what kind of caliber player do you see him as in Europe? Like, what level of team do you think would come and make that kind of offer? Is it a top
That's a
6,
great
top
question.
8 Premier League team, or top team in one of the other big like 5 European leagues, or something a bit smaller?
Gonna be Derby.
I,
Derby's gonna
I,
come knocking.
I definitely would say a top 16 every other league except the Prem. In the Prem, I'd probably say top 8, top 10, because I just feel like the quality in the Prem is just a little bit higher. So even an 8th team is really good.
Yeah.
Especially because he provides a lot. I think he gets criticized too much for not scoring goals, which is fair if he's the 9. And like, people don't realize how technically gifted he is. And I mean, he showed that in the winning goal against Chicago Fire.
Mm-hmm.
He can play multiple positions, can drop back and link a play. I mean, like, this is like stuff like guys like Bobby Firmino at Liverpool do that are so important, right? We
Yeah.
see like, he's the number 9 and he's not consistently scoring, so he gets criticized. I definitely see him, just because he has a lot of skills under his arsenal, that he could definitely be in a top 16 in a top 5 league, like a team like, I don't know, like Benfica or Porto, right? Like a top team in Portuguese league, or like an Ajax or something like that. Not that Ajax goes for players like him, but you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. I just worry that his pace of play is. I feel like he plays. Maybe it's just him in the system right now, but sometimes I feel like he holds onto the ball a little too long or plays a little too slow compared to some of the Premier League teams. But I guess La Liga or Serie A, they kind of play a bit of a slower game, so maybe he'd make a good fit there. But
But you
definitely,
also look around who he's playing with too.
that's true. Yeah.
I think if you add more quality players, I mean, like, no disrespect to Brant and Quinn and Ben, like, the midfielders in Europe and especially in the Prem are gonna be a little bit different than some of the guys we have here in MLS.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think we definitely saw that at the beginning of the season when Swiderski would get the ball and he's like the only one at the box or at the top of the box, and he's got to wait around on like the midfield to catch up. I don't know if it was the formation we were playing or just like the team chemistry hadn't fully developed. But we probably didn't see like 3 or 4 players in the box all fully working together until like mid-season or so, like where it's really started clicking and we really looked powerful in that attacking third.
Also, too, having more, like, when he dropped back, I think that's why you go for a guy like Rios, who's more of an out and out 9, who's going to be in the box. Swiderski, that likes to drop back more, link up play, not really your traditional 9.
Yeah. So you kind of gave us your top 3 players to keep, just for importance of future success. What are your top 3 players you'd want to keep just for the good vibes they bring to the team and the content you're able to do around them?
That's a great question. Definitely one of them is Adam Armour. Hilarious.
He seems like a fun dude.
I love doing content with him because, when you're creating content too, like, you need like people that are entertaining, that are easy to talk to. Adam's that guy. Definitely love like creating content with him. He's one of the players that, like, if I want to do stuff with, I'm definitely like requesting him for all the fun stuff that I try to do.
Mm-hmm.
Who else?
saw you interview Vargas. What was your thoughts on him?
Great player, man. I think it took him a little while. That very first game, you saw quality, but he was just raw talent. He definitely has to improve defensively, in my opinion. But towards the end of the season, you started seeing what a player he can be for us.
Yeah.
I definitely think there's a lot of potential in him, and I think we'll see that in year 2.
Any other players that you would want to keep around just for content purposes?
Else.
If not, we might have to start signing some social media influencers or some
For real,
TikTokers.
dude. I mean, we got some good guys, but most of them are like really serious.
Yeah.
Like they're not like just Adam likes to play around, which I really like. And I'm sure some of these guys aren't like that, but like like
Kalina seems serious.
Nina seems serious. Quinn is very serious too. McNeil.
Oh,
Wow,
right, yeah.
that's surprising.
So it's pretty funny, but yeah, definitely Adam. Maybe McKenzie. I did a podcast with him, and he's really cool.
And then Andres, I don't know if you're gonna ask this or not, but what's like 1 or 2 players you wouldn't mind Charlotte departing with, or who do you think we could benefit from maybe selling?
Putting them on the hot seat.
For real, bro.
I'll tell you, I could start it off if you want me to. You're not gonna like it.
Pablo's been grinding his axe all season.
Who do you want to get rid
of? I think right now with the great form that he's in, and just I'm 50-50 on it now because he seems to be fitting in whatever puzzle Christian Latanzo has going on. But I think Rios, I think we could sell him for a pretty penny now that he's like, we got all this highlight reels we could put together and put in a better consistent striker up there to help Swiderski. And the only reason I say that is because Rios, in my eyes, did absolutely nothing for the team in like the first 3 quarters of the season. Like just absolutely nothing. He didn't, and not in the terms of like goals.
We were playing front 2 with him and Swiderski. You didn't like he was a workhorse, man. He created a lot of space for Swiderski.
I feel like he didn't pressure, like when we didn't have the ball, I feel like he didn't pressure the defenders enough. I feel like whenever we on the counterattacks, he just didn't run back like as hard as I would like him to. And a couple of times when he was out there, like I just forgot he was even out there. He just seemed so invisible.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
I think that's probably one guy I could say, like, if we sold, we could sell him high and just reinvest that money into somebody that would be more consistent.
Right.
Sign some more Colombian guys.
That's what it is. If Reese was Colombian, he wouldn't be saying this.
True that.
I think it would be smart of Charlotte to try to move on Jordi Alcivar. I mean, he occupies a young DP spot. He really hasn't been a consistent player. I don't think he trains the way that Latanzio wants him to train consistently. There's raw talent there, but in my opinion, like he's not going to be a guy that's going to be here long term. I would try to free up that spot for us to be able to get a DP.
That's such a good shout. Just because Alcivar's had some high highs, obviously with the Olympico goal, but also just like some of the lowest lows as well, where it's like, what is he doing out there? And it's frustrating when you see a guy like do it, and you're like, this guy could be, a future like game changer kind of guy, but just not living up to it and just getting too many chances. That was, our biggest gripe with Ortiz early on in the season. It's like, yeah, the talent's there, but like he's just not doing it.
100%. So yeah, that's a guy I could see Charlotte moving on from.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but was Alcivar one of the? Did he play with Miguel previously as well?
Yeah, he was definitely.
Okay.
So no, he didn't play with Miguel, but he was in the same league.
Oh, okay.
When Miguel wasn't at Independiente del Valle, he tried to get him from Liga, which is the team he was at in Ecuador.
Yeah, because I know I'm pretty sure Ortiz had played with him before, and Franco as
Ortiz and
well.
Ortiz and Franco were two
Yeah,
players that I played with, and then Vinny Mello was, I think, in like the U18 for Internacional. I don't know if you really coached him or not, though.
right. And that's another
So,
guy I'm keeping an eye out next season. I'm hoping he has like a good um hot start to maybe push the front office to give the go ahead to Rios.
yeah, man. And you know what? From what I hear, he's a guy that like is very, very highly rated. Like they're expecting a lot from him. So maybe not like in the near future, not like now, but like the guy
Right.
that they want to slowly incorporate. And I think we'll see kind of like, Nuno or Melanda, where you see like there's talent there. I think that's what we'll see from Vinny next year. Now, will it be consistent or not? We need time to adapt to this league. That's another thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think the
Yeah.
quality's there.
He's good in FIFA, so that's good.
That's what's important.
And kind of like staying on that same train, what were your thoughts on like some of the departures in year one with obviously Miguel, but also, Franco, Ortiz, Ruiz all leaving who, maybe Ortiz and Franco not as big key players, but Ruiz, was really starting to hit his stride and show, what he was bringing to the league like right before he left. And it was just kind of a shame that he did leave, but how do you think that impacted our season overall, and what were your thoughts on those departures?
I think it impacted us a lot, man. Especially, I think Sergio Ruiz, like you said, like you hit it on the nail. He was coming into form. I also think I'm in the school that like Alan Franco was a good player for us, in my opinion. I don't think a lot like this is like I think the fan base is split 50-50 on this one, but I like what he provided. I
I,
think against teams like Red Bull, against teams like Philadelphia, where you know they're going to want to be more physical, he's a guy that I would have wanted in that midfield.
yeah,
I
I
think
was
that
in a similar boat. Like he kind of reminded me of like a Mascherano when he played defensive mid for
I,
Liverpool. Of like the dude's gonna tackle you and he's gonna tackle you hard and he's gonna like chirp
bro.
at you and like it's more than like a game. Like he was
Uh-huh.
very physical.
I think we saw that like when there was that period where we were playing Brant, Quinn, and Bender, right? We needed more experience in that midfield, but it got depleted.
Yeah.
So I think we really saw that players like Sergio and Alan Franco, in my opinion. I think Titi Ortiz just never, he just never was consistent.
Yeah.
He got more than enough opportunities. And even Latanzio, when he first took over, said, this is a player we want to give a shot to. I think they gave him a shot, but he just didn't live up to the expectations.
Yep. Totally agree. So we've talked about this a little bit, but what are some roster changes you'd like to see going into next season? And feel free to throw a few names out there as well who you'd like to see Charlotte bring in.
Sure. I think there's three positions that I would incorporate in. Definitely think we need to add another left back. Moore is a solid player, but I think we need something else from that left back position. Especially if what we're not renewing Fuchs. Adams coming back, but he's just young. And I definitely think we need a number 10. We need to hit right on the money with that third DP, kind of like Austin did with Drusy. We need something like that. And then I think the third position that I would add on would be another six. I think we could get a more high caliber six. Brandt's a good player. Jones is a good player. I think that there's another level we can go into in that position.
Yeah, I agree with that last statement for sure. I think I myself have definitely gotten a lot of abuse on Twitter around some of my Brant Bronico takes, even more recently, some of my Kalina takes. But I think, Brant is the guy who I think this season has been fantastic, but it seems like he is getting the most out of his talent. I don't know if there's more in the tank to tap into, especially at his age and stuff. Like I think he's 27, so he's like in his prime. You don't usually see guys kind of elevate their game even more. It's kind of like when you see the top of their peak of their talent. So I totally agree with that. I think another number 6 and a number 10 in the midfield would do wonders for the front three.
100%.
Pablo, anything to add there?
No, I agree. We definitely need to improve on, well, not improve, but get another left back because, yes, Mora is good and Armor is coming back, but if we have another injury situation, um, then we have like kind of no reserves. Also, I think maybe on the left wing, we could. I like Reina over, um, what's his name?
Yazviak?
Yazviak. Yeah, I always get those two guys confused, but I like Reina over Yazviak. I think Yazviak's there to stay, obviously. Um, and I'm not sure what the front office is thinking on Reina. I have a feeling they might get rid of him this winter transfer window.
Yeah, that if we didn't have Reina, I would say we need to add on that position.
Yeah,
Like you, I feel like the club's trying to push him on, especially also when you talk about like the makeup of the roster. The guy's on 800K. If you're gonna pay a winger 800K, you need him to produce more than what Reina has.
yeah, and the thing is, like with Reina, he's had a couple of assists and what 2, 3 goals
Yeah.
so far, as in comparison to Yazviak has no goals and maybe 1 or 2 assists.
Yeah.
Great point.
Speaking of Reina real quick though, and you said you'd like to see more out of a winger, especially someone of his talent. I mean, do you feel like Latanzio this season has kind of like for some reason taken guys out of the starting lineup or even out of the team in general when they are starting to hit form? Like Reina and Gaines to me kind of stick out of like guys who are really starting to make a difference in the attack and then just got dropped for what seemed like no reason, and then we started to struggle again.
I don't know about the Gaines piece. I think Gaines has come in and like did well. Um, Definitely for sure Reina though. And I think that was more of the club trying to move Reina on because you're right, Reina was starting to find form, and even in my opinion, he was our best left winger this season.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He was the most productive. He played well. Maybe defensively he didn't offer you what Latanzio wanted, which is I think one of the reasons. But I think a bigger reason is the club wanted to move on him, and I think us not making playoffs, a lot of that has to go. I would take the blame less from Latanzio and put it more on the front office because you're depleting this guy's squad in the middle of a playoff run. Like when you still had an opportunity till the end, but I mean, players didn't come in time. You didn't have midfielders, and you're trying to sell one of your best players, right? I mean, there was rumors that Charlotte offered him to a to Racing in Liga 2. So I definitely think it had to do more with the club wanting to move him on versus Latanzio not wanting to play him. That's just the sense I get. Which in hindsight you could say, you know what, like Latanzio should have stood his ground. Today he's the interim manager still.
Yeah.
I don't think he could take full decisions like he will be able to as the permanent head coach for Charlotte.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
If I were him, I would be having a conversation like, yeah, I'm gonna be the coach, but you can't be doing stuff like you did to me in the middle of the season where you're trying to move on Reina, right? So
yeah, and it seemed like a similar thing happened with Sergio Ruiz and stuff, where when he was hitting form, then he just kind of got dropped because he was gonna get transferred out.
yeah.
So just to hit our last topic, then we'll wrap things up. What do you see the goals for the team being for next season?
Definitely making playoffs. That has to be on top of their mind. I think they're working towards it. I mean, they're spending the next 3 weeks training, um, start preparing for the season. I think the front office is very active right now. The scouts are out, like they've identified players that they want, and in my opinion, playoffs should be the bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
At the standard that this team needs to shoot for top 4. If you get good targets and they flop, that's fine in my opinion. At the end of the day, you don't know until these players play.
Right.
I need to see have the intent of creating a competitive top 4 team in MLS. Expectations going into year 2.
Yeah, love to hear that. I agree. I mean, you look at this first season, beat New York FC, who are defending champs, right? Beat them twice. Beat New York Red Bulls once. Held LA Galaxy to 1-0. The Philadelphia game 4-0, right when Philadelphia was just bullying the league. Just so the potential is definitely there, and if you add more to that, I think it's totally fair to demand a top 4 spot in the league next year.
100%, man. I mean, this year, people's expectations this year, in my opinion, were too high. But now, with everything that you have, pretty sensible guy. I think what I'm seeing, what you have versus what you can add, could definitely take you to a top 4 team.
Yeah.
Everybody goes and spends money like Toronto and adds an Insigne, Bernardeschi, guys like this. Okay, then I'll have a different expectation. Reality is not a lot of teams are gonna put the money that Toronto's putting down. How effective is that, right? You're paying a guy 14 million, and you guys didn't even make the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that's just because they came in too late and Toronto's just dug a hole too deep already for those two guys to pull them out of? I mean, do you think they'll be a top 4 contender next season?
That's going to be tough to say because in MLS, it's not just about having the guy. It's understanding how to properly build the squad,
Mm-hmm.
And that's more important than just having big names. You look at teams like, Seattle Sounders, who this was the first year that they didn't make an MLS Cup, but they've got guys like Rudias, who's on 2 million. They got guys like Nicolodeiro, players that aren't superstars in the world looking in, but they're great MLS DPs.
Right.
Look at Philadelphia, that guys like that, that no one had any idea comes into this league and balls out.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more important understanding the makeup of the squad versus just having one player that off balances that. Especially in a league that has a lot of parity. This was a Premier League, yeah, bro. We need more Insignes and Bernardeschi's to compete with the top teams.
Yeah.
But that's how MLS rolls.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I think that's been a nice change of pace of watching this league compared to Premier League, where you kind of know who's going to win the match before it kicks off. Here in the MLS, anyone can really beat anyone else on any given day. That's, I think, something we learned about this league in year 1.
100%.
Pablo, anything to add there? I mean, what do you see as the goals for next season?
Yeah, I think definitely, like you guys just mentioned, just making playoffs. We make the playoffs, then that's a little bit better than what we did this season. And like how you said earlier, especially early on in the season when I think the highest we ranked on the tables was 5th, which was very surprising to me for a brand new expansion team. People's hopes got just shot up, way up. And then we kind of saw the reality of it. But then just there towards the end, just fighting, and when we thought okay, maybe they can, and they stayed fighting. Man, if they just do that next season all year long, I for sure think we'll make playoffs, and we can make a nice little run at it. But hopefully that, like you guys said, also the front office just needs to kind of stay out of it. Letting players just participate and show their worth.
Yeah. Do you see it possible, and this is a question for both of you, do you see it possible for Charlotte FC in their second season to lift some kind of silverware, where it be, the US Open Cup, the MLS Cup, or, Supporter Shield, or even this new tournament kicking off next summer? I mean, do you realistically think we have a shot at one of these?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I gotta see what we do this window, man. To be honest with you, I would give you a better answer right before the season starts versus now.
Hmm.
But I mean, I definitely wouldn't count us out of any like cup tournament. I think we could do well and make a deep run in a cup style tournament with
Yeah.
now.
Hmm.
But
And just to
depending who we get as well, because I mean, like you've seen it in one-off games, we could beat anybody. We beat the number one team in the East. We destroyed them 4-0.
Yeah.
So in a cup game, anything can happen.
Yeah, totally agree with that. What are you going to say, Pablo?
And I was just just to add on to that question you posed, like, with next season coming up, and we got 3 cup tournaments that we're to participating in. Um, do you think we should heavily focus on one more than the other? Like, should we focus on more on like a reachable cup, maybe like the Open Cup instead of um, the MLS Cup or the League Cup? Like, is
Well,
there
the
one you would favor more? Obviously, the MLS Cup is what you want, but like on realistic terms, would you focus on a different tournament instead?
it just depends on how things are, man. Like you obviously want to stay competitive on all of them, but even like the League Cup, they're gonna pause the season, and it's all gonna be played in 1 month. Know what kind of form we'll be in that month? Will we be in a dip? Will we be in a high? So it's just a tournament that they add, in my opinion, more of a money grab. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to be like a viewer thing, but still interesting because this is, like you said, it's all gonna be. When I saw the schedule for it, I'm like, that's nuts that they're just doing this in just 1 month. Um,
Yeah, it's like a World Cup
hopefully we
style.
don't pick up, yeah, and hopefully we don't pick up like injuries of just trying to force something.
Yeah. And how far out are Charlotte from becoming a Champions League team like Seattle was?
3 years.
yeah, if we build uh, the way we built this year and just add on key pieces by year 3, we should be there.
Nice, because that's
And,
probably the competition I'm looking forward to the most, to see Charlotte
and
compete in.
again, like if imagine we do, and then teams come and then they take Swiderski and Malanda. That's kind of the reality that you live in MLS.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I get
Again, we
Little
got a
that.
good
setback.
team. Boom. Uh, Someone comes and takes 2 of your best players.
Yeah.
And it's gone.
Awesome. Well, Jorge, thanks for jumping on. We'll let you go on that one. Tell the people where they can follow you and what you got going on in the off season.
Yeah. We have you can follow us at TopBin90 on all our socials. Real TopBin90 on TikTok. We've got dropping this Mackenzie Gaines interviews Wednesdays. It's been taking forever for me to get to it, but it's a good little kind of like mukbang kind of style interview I did with him, and then I got some stuff going on with Christian Fuchs also coming up. So just stay tuned.
Nice, nice. And for everyone else, you can follow us at offsides_CLTFC on all our socials. And obviously on any major podcast platform, you can follow us. If you enjoyed today's episode, obviously go follow TopBin90, share this episode with a friend, and leave a 5-star review, and we'll shout it out on the pod. All right, we will catch you guys when the World Cup kicks off. We'll be taking a break
Yeah.
until then.